In my opinion, Extension left alone is a little bit too insular. And I remember when I joined Extension Service for the first time at University of Minnesota, I was told I had to do things the Extension way. And that forever kind of set us apart from the Academy. And I'm arguing that it's past time to assert a leadership role across at our institutions across the Academy, and the first one of which is with your vice presidents for research. Of course, it depends on the right individual, but in our case, I'm working hip to hip with my vice president for research around the kind of the reestablishment of centers and institutes to put an engagement component inside of the historically research-based enterprises. The first one of which we created was the Center for Latino and Latina Studies and Engagement. We're building one out right now around community innovation and engagement that will be a university-wide center that cuts across the colleges of the university. I think driving that in part from a VPR standpoint is this NSF focus on broader impacts and the need to have our major grant proposals written with an outreach dimension to it. At Oregon State, we've created a research information network, a network of people that are available to help write those big grant proposals. And we've most recently created an Office of Research Development in order to do a better job of kind of bringing both of those missions together. A second important academic contact is, in my case, the Vice Provost for Student Affairs. I don't know any university that hasn't identified student success as one of the most important variables, things like graduation rate, first-year retention, and the things that make students successful. Well, one of those is experiential learning and the opportunity we have with our statewide distribution of resources, faculty members, and opportunities for students to give them activities in our communities. That's also a key to the Carnegie classification for community engagement that many of us have sought or are seeking, and that is something that we learned we had to work a lot harder on. And my colleague, Vice Provost for Student Affairs, is opened arms to systematizing that kind of experiential learning. PACE is our Office for Professional and Continuing Education. That's not a new effort for Extension Services, but I'm not sure it's been built out fully as a think of it as a product line, a private benefit, for-profit product line. We get hung up, for the right reasons, I think, on the public funding that comes to us to do public good. And I'm totally totally with that. We need to do public good research that just advances social goals, but we also have the distinctive ability to offer for-product work. And this particular office at Oregon State has about 18 people in it now, and it took a while to run in the black, but it is now running in the black and making a huge difference for the professionals in our state. And the final point here is to bring in more faculty. If you have an opportunity to advance the engagement agenda bigger than just extension, there are many units at a university who are ready to step into it, and many faculty members who, without extension funding, are willing and able to do community engaged work. And we're doing a variety of things at Oregon State to do that, including an annual bus tour for new faculty to show them academic opportunities to form partnerships and then cast their career-length work in a community engaged environment rather than staying at their lab bench. Jim Waddell was here earlier. I don't see him in the room right now. Jim is at the APLU office. Oh, Jim, yeah, thank you very much. He'll be providing kind of the guiding hand to a commission that's under development around this concept of new engagement. The word engagement has, if not been co-opted, at least it's an attractive word. So you'll now at our universities find references to alumni engagement, student engagement, donor engagement, industry engagement, and that varies a bit from the kind of the historic Kellogg Commission that created the idea of community engagement that's all around co-creation and partnership with those that you serve. Well, this commission that's about to be created will have conversations around these kinds of issues, and I would encourage all of us to get involved in the issues. Things like incentives. How do our promotion and tenure codes work for advancing faculty who do work in outreach scholarship? Alignment across the missions. You know, I'm increasingly fond of saying that engagement doesn't stand alone as a mission, but we need to also talk about engaged learning and engaged discovery. It is a different way of thinking about especially a land-grant university doing its work. What about the context for engagement? I think there's a need for a holistic view across the disciplines at a university around how engagement looks in a variety of settings by college. At our university, outreach engagement is one of 3 accreditation themes that the university is using to advance its own institutional accreditation. Institutionalization, for me, refers to this, how we frame up our Carnegie Foundation applications. Strategic resource planning, we need to find a way to create funds or generate resources in order to do the work of engagement. The need for common measures around impact measurement, accountability and public trust. Our University Day speaker this year came out of the Augsburg Center for Democracy. His name was Harry Boyd, and he said that there's a loss of faith in demography. The Washington Post did a recent article lately that identified higher ed as an increasingly partisan issue. And that's a radical reversal from just 2 years ago. Harry quoted this data that said 58% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents say higher ed has a negative effect on how things are going, compared to only 35% that say it's positive. Things like that get my attention. So it seems to me we need to think about the last point here, and that is convening. There's something unique about a university campus to convene disparate communities to talk about common issues. And in this respect, I think we might want to think about taking an active role in university consortia like the Engagement Scholarship Consortium, another one called Imagining America. The conversations are happening there around evolving the engagement and outreach missions of our university, and I think far too often Extension is missing in action. And finally, I've become increasingly intrigued with Clayton Christensen's work around disruptive innovation. He's a business professor at Harvard, and we heard, I thought yesterday's conversation around innovation was fascinating. And I heard reference to essentially disruptive innovation. That is, what can happen at the fringes of, in our case, our work that might take some of our audiences or our focus away from us. The examples we heard yesterday were things like Apple dominating the former music industry, Uber in taxis, Airbnb in hotels. Historically, Clayton talks about personal computers disrupted mainframes, cellular phones disrupted fixed line telephones. Community colleges have disrupted some four-year university work, and others. So I think the real question for us, and what I increasingly think about, is can we disrupt ourselves from within? Are there ways to advance and expand and do work that, if we're not careful, others are going to come in on top of our mission area and begin to do the work for us? And so I just kind of ask the question here, do we have some potential disruptive innovations at play here? What about e-extension? I'm inclined to think that their Ask an Expert model has helped us to disrupt ourselves from within. Last year, my faculty answered 4,000 questions, and when we asked people who came to us, half of them had never been contacted by Extension before. So now we're penetrating a brand new community. We've pioneered this concept called Open Campus that really is a function of educational partnerships. That's expanded to include about half of our county extension offices now exist in what we call an open campus environment. And to exist there, we have clear partnerships with K-12 and community colleges, because at least in our state, there's a community college for every 2 counties, and they share some of the same commitments to community-based education that we do. They have educational resources and facilities and faculty. So Open Campus is working on things like college and career pathways in order to smooth the transition for young people. It's working on degree completion. About 23% of our population, and I suspect yours, between the ages of 25 and 55 have some college credit and no degree. And they're place-bound. And if we have online resources, which we do, and community-based faculty, which we do, we can work with these individuals to accomplish that credential with all the benefits that come with it. And finally, community innovation and economic vitality is the third part of what we're calling Open Campus, which I think has been a disruptive innovation for Oregon State. And then the final point I'll make is this idea called outdoor school for all. It turns out that without our advancing it, a citizen group in Oregon did a statewide series of listening sessions as they prepared to advance an idea called outdoor school. And later it was supported by a ballot measure in November that passed, that created a week-long residential outdoor school for every 5th grader in the state and funded it at $44 million for the biennium. And when they asked the question, what institution is positioned to do that? The answer was Oregon State University Extension. So my budget doubled overnight in November, and we're busy now standing up that new product line. So I think I'll stop there.